Some killers hide behind a charming smile. Others are forged in a crucible of abuse. And a few are so quiet, so isolated, that their madness grows unseen for decades. Today, we're exploring three of the most notorious criminals in American history, each a different shade of darkness, each leaving a terrifyingly unique legacy. First, Ted Bundy, the charming monster next door. Ted Bundy didn't look like a killer, and that's what made him one of the most dangerous criminals in American history. He was clean-cut, intelligent, and well-spoken. He volunteered at a suicide prevention hotline. He studied law. People trusted him. Women felt safe around him. And all the while, Ted Bundy was hiding a violent obsession that would lead to the deaths of dozens of young women. Bundy was born in 1946 and raised in what appeared to be a normal household. But from an early age, something was off. He reportedly showed disturbing behavior as a child, and later admitted to being deeply affected by violent media. Over time, fantasy blurred into desire, and desire turned into action. In the early 1970s, young women began disappearing across Washington, Oregon, Utah, and Colorado. Most were college students. Most had long hair parted in the middle. Most vanished after being seen with a man named Ted. Bundy's method was terrifyingly simple. He would fake an injury often, wearing a cast or sling, and ask women for help. His calm voice and boyish charm lowered their guard. Once they were close, he struck. What made Bundy different wasn't just the brutality of his crimes. It was his ability to blend in. He wasn't lurking in alleyways. He was at libraries, on campuses, in coffee shops. He was the guy you'd never suspect. In 1974, Bundy was finally arrested after multiple eyewitnesses came forward. A woman named Carol Darrench survived an attack and later identified him in court. Despite this, Bundy acted as his own lawyer, relishing the spotlight and manipulating the media. He smiled for cameras. He flirted. He turned his trial into a performance. Even behind bars, Bundy was dangerous. In 1977, he escaped from jail. Not once, but twice. After his second escape, Bundy fled to Florida, where his violence escalated. In January 1978, he broke into a Florida State University sorority house and attacked multiple women in a single night, killing 2. Days later, he abducted and murdered a 12-year-old girl. This time, there was no escape. Bundy was arrested again and finally faced overwhelming evidence. In court, he continued to manipulate, deny, and delay. He confessed to murders only when it benefited him, often withholding details as leverage to postpone his execution. Even in his final days, he sought control. Ted Bundy was executed by electric chair on January 24, 1989. As news of his death spread, crowds outside the prison cheered. Today, Bundy is remembered not just for the number of lives he took, but for the terrifying lesson he left behind. Monsters don't always look like monsters. They can be charming. They can be intelligent. They can be the person sitting next to you in class. Ted Bundy didn't rely on strength alone. He relied on trust. And that's what made him truly dangerous. Next, we look at a killer whose story couldn't be more different. Eileen Wuornos, America's most notorious female serial killer. Eileen Wuornos wasn't born a monster. She was created. Her story isn't one of privilege or charm. It's a story of abandonment, abuse, survival, and violence that spiraled out of control. Eileen Wuornos was born in 1956 and almost immediately abandoned by her parents. She was raised by grandparents who were abusive and unstable. By her early teens, she was living on the streets, surviving day to day. A childhood was something she never had. By the time she was an adult, Eileen knew one thing: survival. She hitchhiked across Florida, working along the highways, sleeping rough, and trusting men who often didn't deserve it. Her life was a cycle of exploitation, fear, and anger, and it was building towards something violent. Between 1989 and 1990, 7 men were found murdered along Florida highways. All had been shot. All had met Eileen Wuornos shortly before their deaths. When police arrested her, Eileen claimed self-defense. She said the men had assaulted her, that she was protecting herself, that she was tired of being hurt. Whether that was true in every case remains debated, but the killings were real. Eileen didn't fit the image people expected. She wasn't quiet or manipulative. She was angry, loud, unapologetic, and the media didn't know what to do with her. She became a spectacle. During her trial, Eileen's mental health deteriorated in front of the world. She lashed out in court. She accused police of conspiracy. She warned of corruption and claimed she was being silenced. Many dismissed her as unstable. Others saw a woman who had been broken long before she ever pulled a trigger. She was convicted of murder and sentenced to death. In prison, Eileen's behavior only became more erratic. She rejected appeals. She refused help. She demanded her execution move forward. She said she was tired, that she wanted it to end. In 2002, Eileen Wuornos was executed by lethal injection. Her final words were haunting. She said she was sailing away. Today, Eileen Wuornos remains one of the most controversial figures in true crime history. Some see her as a cold-blooded killer. Others see her as a victim who finally snapped after a lifetime of abuse. The truth may be uncomfortable. Eileen Wuornos was responsible for terrible crimes, but she was also the product of neglect, violence, and a system that failed her at every turn. Her story forces a question many don't like asking. When someone is abused their entire life, at what point does survival become something darker? Eileen Wuornos didn't just shock America. She exposed it. Finally, we journeyed to a quiet farmhouse in rural Wisconsin to meet the man whose real-life horrors inspired Hollywood nightmares. Ed Gein, the real-life monster who inspired horror. Ed Gein didn't go on killing sprees. He didn't stalk cities. He didn't chase victims. Instead, he quietly changed horror forever. Ed Gein was born in 1906 and raised in isolation. His mother, Augusta, was deeply religious, controlling, and emotionally abusive. She taught Ed that the outside world was sinful, especially women, and that she was the only person he could trust. When she died in 1945, Ed Gein didn't move on. He unraveled. Left alone on the family farm, Ed sealed off rooms that reminded him of his mother, preserving them like shrines. He lived in filth. He spoke rarely. And something dark began to grow inside his loneliness. Gein became obsessed with death, not just dying, but bodies. He began robbing graves. At night, Ed would visit local cemeteries and dig up freshly buried corpses. He took them back to his farmhouse and did things so disturbing they still haunt investigators decades later. He made furniture out of human remains, bowls from skulls, belts from skin, masks from faces. But Ed didn't stop there. In 1954, a local woman named Mary Hogan vanished. Years later, her remains were found in Gein's home. Then, in 1957, hardware store owner Bernice Worden disappeared. This time, police followed the trail straight to Ed Gein's farm. What they found inside the house shocked the world. Human skin lampshades, a suit made of flesh, decapitated heads stored like trophies. The farmhouse wasn't just a crime scene. It was a nightmare made real. Ed Gein was arrested without resistance. He didn't try to run. He didn't deny what he'd done. Instead, he calmly explained himself, as if none of it was unusual. Psychiatrists later concluded that Gein suffered from severe mental illness. He was found legally insane and sent to a mental institution rather than prison. Unlike many killers, Ed Gein never sought fame. He never gave interviews. He never bragged. And yet, his influence is everywhere. His crimes inspired some of the most iconic horror villains and history characters, like Norman Bates from Psycho, Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Buffalo Bill from The Silence of the Lambs. Ed Gein didn't just kill. He changed how we imagine monsters. He showed the world that horror doesn't need shadows, or speed, or rage. Sometimes it lives quietly on a farm, wears your neighbor's face, and waits to be discovered. 3 different people, 3 different paths to darkness, all leaving an indelible mark on our understanding of evil. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that shape our world.